So up next, we have Elizabeth London. Elizabeth is a professional actor, director, voice, and teaching artist based in New York. Her specialties are Shakespeare and, as she describes it, quote, things written this morning. Entirely new work devised with her theater company, Hook and Eye. Elizabeth rarely does anything from the 400 years in between. Take it away, Elizabeth.
Hello, can you all hear me? I think I have unmuted. Great. Okay, so I'm so happy to see so many faces, and those of you who are hidden away, I hope that you will appear, because as a teaching artist, I always want to see everybody as if we are physically in a room together. And I'm going to start with some activities that we will do with our bodies and our voices to try to get this idea of the story in our bodies and be able to say the words and feel like these characters, as you can do with your students. And I'm a Shakespeare expert, so I'm going to be bringing you the background of this story. I will be calling it theater, even though I know it's an opera. And just so you know, this opera premiered 2 days and 130 years ago. So just on February 9th, 130 years ago, we say, well, here we are, and we're still doing it today, which is why we know it's so wonderful. But let me bring you back. Oh, and I guess I should explain. I am a white woman with pandemic now graying in a short kind of pixie cut. I will put on reading glasses when we have to look at some text. There will be some slides. And for those of you who need it later, they will be, I believe, sent to you. And people will hopefully be reading them out loud, so you don't need to see what is there necessarily today. And I use she, her pronouns. So the first thing I will say is, everybody, if you would be willing, please show yourselves in a gallery view so we can all see each other. And if you can, give yourself as much space as possible to be seen. Oh, thank you for appearing, some more people. I am attached to the computer, but I will use as much of my body as I can, and I hope you will as well. Because the first thing I'm going to do, I'll let you know, I will sometimes speak to you as the wonderful educators that you are, and sometimes I will speak to you as if you are your students. I don't know all of the ages, so I'm going to do activities that you can adjust depending on your populations. But the first thing is, I want us to get ourselves a little bit warmed up and also to meet some of the character types in this opera. So please, if you can, show me with your whole body in a frozen statue, and I will give you your cue, which is 3, 2, 1, curtain, that you are the most noble person in this Zoom meeting today. Here we go. Nobility. 3, 2, 1, curtain. Oh my gosh. Looking around, if you can, I see lots of noses in the air, some arms in the air as if I have the idea and you must listen to me. I see very strong bodies, very vertical people, deep thinkers, some hands on the chin like a good thinker. Great, shake that out, good. That is the first character type. John Falstaff, by the way, is a sir. He is a knight. So he is actually, while the scammer scamming, he is a nobleman actually at heart. The second thing we need to know is that there are people who scheme. Everybody schemes in this opera. So please let me see that you are somebody who plots and schemes using your whole body on 3, 2, 1, curtain. Oh my gosh, beautiful. For those of you who can take a sneaky look around, I see lots of like hunched over, lots of hands like, yes, something going on. Some more thinking, but this is thinking with like one finger, like even Mr. Evil. I've got some hands together. Oh my gosh, what can I do? What can I do? It's going to be so fun. Fabulous. And shake that out, shake that out. Great. The next kind of character that we're going to meet are the lovers. There are actually lovers, real lovers at the base of this opera. And I want to see that you are somebody who just exudes love, whatever that form takes. On 3, 2, 1, curtain. Oh, great. Oh my gosh. If you can look around, there are people with big smiles on their faces. There are hands together, like on your cheek, showing, oh, it's so dear to me. I see smiles. I see openness. I see sort of hugs. Oh, I love it. Good. And shake that out. Shake that out. Fantastic. Sometimes love goes too far. I'm going to tell you, there is a main character who is so jealous. It's just ridiculous. I want to see that you have that green-eyed monster, as Shakespeare called it. This jealousy overtakes everything. On 3, 2, 1, curtain. Oh, great. Oh, this is awful to see, only because it's so horrible, but beautifully done. If you can see, there are eyes that are sort of scrunched together and hands that are clasping now in different ways. Oh, it's so lovely and awful. Grimaces on the face. Good, shake that out. Oh, let that out of our faces. Good. 2 more. As Nick told us at the end, we find magical creatures and fairies. By the way, you can see them. They might be invisible, but for us, we're going to see them if we can. I want you to show us whatever kind of magical creature you can imagine, a fairy, a sprite of whatever sort. On 3, 2, 1, curtain. Great. Oh my goodness. I see hands in the air as if we're flying. Maybe we've got horns on our head even. Oh my gosh, we see people actually in flight. I love it. Good. And shake that out, shake that out. Finally, we have our title character, John Falstaff. He is a big man. And this is something that we're going to talk about later, is that he has girth and size and he loves it. He says, actually in the Shakespeare play, he wants more life. He doesn't like thin people. He says, you don't actually look like you're partaking in life. He eats a lot. He drinks a lot. He hangs out with his friends. He parties with the ladies. I want to see that you are somebody who likes to hang out and party with your friends and eat and drink, whatever those things are. You are a lover of life. On 3, 2, 1, curtain. Yes. Oh my gosh. People are showing us what they're drinking. They're having their coffee or their water. We've got, yes, I love life. Big hands in the air. Oh, more big smiles, kind of laying back. I love it. Good. Shake it out. Shake it out. Fabulous. So if you were standing up, please take a seat if you can. These are the kinds of character types we will meet in this opera. And these all come from Shakespeare. But I'm going to tell you this opera was actually, while most of it is the plot of The Merry Wives of Windsor, if you've ever heard of that, Falstaff as a character actually comes from a history play, or a double history play, his Henry IV, parts 1 and 2. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about the background, and then we're going to go into some detail. So the first thing that I want you to know is that Henry IV, parts 1 and 2, was the history of England, and it was the history of the family that bred Elizabeth I. So Shakespeare, who had to have royal patronage, was also trying to give a really good view of his queen. Well, in Henry IV's parts 1 and 2, we have Sir John Falstaff. He is a knight, but he is now really down on his luck. He is scheming. I'm sorry, he's in the brothels and he's hanging out and drinking. And he has sort of corrupted the idea, I know, of the young prince who will become Henry V. But Prince Hal is hanging out with his friends. And the point of this is Falstaff is actually, the name originally was Sir John Oldcastle. He was based on a real knight who fell on hard times. Sir John Oldcastle's family did not like the portrayal of this character Falstaff, and Falstaff was then given a new name in the Shakespeare play, but he was a wonderful character. And while in battle in Henry IV, he is a coward, having been a former knight. He's a coward now, and he doesn't believe in fighting. He's also the most wonderful, joyous character. And he is someone who the audiences loved and Queen Elizabeth loved so much that the legend is she asked Shakespeare to bring back this character in another play, which is how we got The Merry Wives of Windsor. And the story goes that Queen Elizabeth wanted him to bring back Falstaff and show Falstaff in love. While in the story, The Merry Wives of Windsor, and then the opera Falstaff, he's not quite in love because he's trying to scam these ladies to get their money from their husbands that they have. He still, though, is a fool for like the happy love that we're trying to discuss, but he's not himself really in love. But apparently Shakespeare wrote this play, Merry Wives of Windsor, in 2 weeks in order to be presented at a performance in front of the Queen for the Order of the Garter. And when we're in the opera Falstaff, you'll notice that they're in the tavern is the Garter Tavern. That is what the line that became the patron of Shakespeare's theater company, Lord Chamberlain, was joining the Order of the Garter at that time. So there's a lot of details of history that show up in these plays, in both of the plays and in the opera. And the opera brings elements from both plays. So we're going to look at some text later, but I just wanted you to know that. But here's the thing, most of it comes from Merry Wives of Windsor. This is a comedy. And in Shakespeare's day, a comedy, while very funny, and we find Sir John Falstaff absolutely hilarious and wonderful, and in an opera, he's absolutely hilarious and wonderful. The idea of a comedy was to reinforce the idea of marriage, the institution of marriage. It has to bring the social order together, which means at the very end, the right people have to end up together and they have to get married. So while there are all the machinations, ultimately at the end of the Merry Wives of Windsor and at the end of the Falstaff opera, the ladies, Mistresses Ford and Page, will remain with their husbands. Their marriages will be reinforced. Sir John Falstaff will not end up with either of them, in case you thought, spoiler alert, he doesn't. But the young daughter whose parents actually want to marry her to the wrong person will end up with the man she loves. Now, there are some things that are different in the opera than in the plays. One thing is that the daughter in the opera, she's called Nanette. And if everyone can speak, even if we don't hear you, everyone just say Nanette, so you have it in your mouth. Nanette is actually, oh, great, I heard some. In the plays, she's actually Anne, and she's actually Anne Page. In the opera, she is Mistress Ford's daughter. And that's just a little bit of a change. The characters in the Henry IV play come into the Merry Wives of Windsor, and they all come into Falstaff, but their characteristics are different. A couple changes, though, besides Anne becoming Nanette, is that Falstaff has two friends, Bardolph and Pistol. They will appear later in Merry Wives and in the opera, slightly changed. Nym, who was another friend, disappears. He does not come into the opera, and Bardolph gets all of his lines. So Bardolph and Pistol become Bardolfo and Pistola. You can say those if you'd like. Bardolfo and Pistola.
Bardolfo.
Great. I see mouths moving and I hear some. I love it so much. Great. And Mistress Quickly, who in the play Merry Wives of Windsor, by the way, does not move quickly. Her name is Quickly and she moves very slowly. In the opera, she's nice and fast. So just so you know, there are some things that are brought in the same and other things that are different. What else do I need to tell you? I feel like there was something, oh my gosh, that I forgot. Well, I think if I remember, I'll go back. I will also say that in Shakespeare's day, only men were allowed to perform on stage. So all of the roles were played by men. The young ingenue types were played by the boys who didn't yet have beards. And in opera, we know that often there are the trouser roles where the women play the men. Just, you know, now we can play whatever we want. And as we talk about these characters and with our students, of course, we can play whatever we want. And that's something I always encourage. Okay, let's dive in. We're going to now act as if we have students with us and we are going to start to work with them. So the first thing is, if we could bring up our first slide. That is a picture that I made. That is Shakespeare in a comedy because he's got some pink sunglasses on in case you can't see. But we also have a statue of Falstaff. This is actually in Shakespeare's hometown in Stratford-upon-Avon. And this is a statue where Falstaff represents comedy. There's a memorial to Shakespeare, and there are 4 of his characters who were put on display, and Falstaff, being so popular and so loved, is here. And that's how you know he's such a popular character. But if we could go to the first slide. I'm going to ask questions. And again, if we could go into a gallery view, you could see all of this later by yourselves. But there are questions you can ask your students that ask about the themes of the play. So we've met a little bit of a few of the characters and the character types. I'm going to ask some questions. And because I can't see everybody, when you respond, if you could do some movement so we could sort of see throughout what movement we have if you agree with something. If you really agree, then give me a nice big movement so we can really see that. And if you don't quite agree, you can just give a smaller movement. With students, you could put questions around the room where there's a place to go to agree, a place to go if you disagree, and a place to go where you are unsure. So let's just start out. And I'm going to ask you to please, if you agree, depending on the magnitude, show me movement. Parents understand what is best for their children. Great. I see people sort of all over the map, some very much, some fewer. If you want to tell me in the chat why you agree or how much you agree, parents understanding what is best for their children, you can drop that in so we could see. I'm going to move on meanwhile. Your parents shouldn't choose who you marry. Your parents should not choose who you marry. Let's see, agreeing or disagreeing. Great. Many of us say your parents shouldn't choose. Some of our students might come from families, and some of us might come from families where we had arranged marriages. And that is absolutely something that we can discuss as well. But this is something that we can bring up with the students, because in the play, Nanette's parents, or in the opera, Nanette's parents want her to marry the wrong person. Somebody completely unsuitable for her. And ultimately, yay, she will find the right suitor. Great. I'm going to ask one more. Deception is always wrong. If you agree, deception is always wrong. Great. We're seeing a little like, I'm not quite so sure. We might have moved to the side of the room, said unsure. Great. That is something you can think and discuss as well. In the play, there's a lot of deception. There's a lot of deception against Falstaff and the ladies who scam, and deception against the very jealous husband. Mr. Ford is the very jealous husband. So we have to have everybody come together in the end, but we're trying to teach people lessons and trying to do what's right, just so you know. There are more of these questions on the slide, and then you can get later. So please feel free to go on. I'm giving you a little sprinkle taste. I hope that's okay. But let's move on to a new activity. I want us to go into some of the language of these plays. So you can see there were actually, by the way, 10 operas. There have been 10 operas based on the Merry Wives of Windsor or Falstaff, and also Henry IV. Verdi's is considered the greatest, and that's, of course, why we're still doing it 130 and 2 days later, years and 2 days later. But he actually mixes elements of both the plays. Some of the operas only use the Merry Wives and some only use the Henry IV. But because we have the mixture here, we're going to see how this happens. So we have some text here from Henry IV, Part 1. This is text about the idea of honor. In Henry IV, Part 1, Falstaff is reflecting on honor as he and Prince Hal are getting ready for a battle in which either of them might be killed. I have asked Emily, who's going to do a wonderful presentation later, to read the scene with me. We're going to just really think about the idea of honor at the end, but I'm giving you a whole scene because you can do it with your students where they can compare as well. So I'm going to read Prince Henry, and Emily is going to read Falstaff. I just want you to listen out how Falstaff feels about the idea of honor. Here we go. Say thy prayers and farewell.
I would 'twere bedtime, Hal, and all well.
Why, thou owest God a death.
'Tis not due yet. I would be loath to pay him before his day. What need I be so forward with him that calls not on me? Well, 'tis no matter. Honor pricks on me. Yea, but how if honor pricks me off when I come on? How then can honor set to a leg? No. Or an arm? No. Or take away the grief of a wound? No. Honor hath no skill in surgery then. No. What is honor? A word? What is in that word honor? What is that honor? Air? A trim reckoning. Who hath it? He that died o' Wednesday? Doth he feel it? No. Doth he hear it? No. 'Tis insensible then, yea, to the dead. But will it not live with the living? No. Why? Detraction will not suffer it. Therefore, I'll none of it. Honor is a mere scutcheon. And so ends my catechism.
Great. I'm giving her a round of applause. This is my round of applause. Beautiful. Does anybody want to tell me in the chat, does honor seem like a good thing here to Falstaff? Emily's shaking her head. I see shaking of heads. Great. Honor is something that he doesn't want. He asks the question, is this good? Does it do this? He answers the question, no. This is important to remember later. Is it this? No, it's not that. He ultimately says it's worth nothing. It's air. So keeping that in mind, everybody, is everyone okay if I keep plowing through? I hope we're all okay. Great. So again, it means nothing. I'm asking you, does it mean anything? I'm answering for myself. No, it does not. Great. Let us move on to the idea of honor in Merry Wives of Windsor. Great. This is the very beginning of Merry Wives of Windsor. It's also the very beginning of the opera, just so you know, when we have this idea of honor. In the Merry Wives of Windsor, Falstaff has just asked two accomplices, Pistol and Nym. Again, in the opera, Nym disappears and it becomes only Bardolph, but he asks Pistol and Nym to help with a scam by each delivering a letter to one of the Merry Wives. The men refuse, arguing that it would tarnish their honor. These two accomplices, by the way, just like Falstaff, they are pickpockets. They are rogues. They spend their days drinking. They borrow money. They don't have any cash of their own. These are people we're asking, will they do a favor for us? Nick, will you read Falstaff again with me in this?
Of course.
Great. So again, we're really thinking about the idea more at the end, especially, but this is a little lead in that you can do with your students again, depending on their ages. Here we go.
I will not lend thee a penny, not a penny. I have graded upon my good friends for 3 reprieves for you and your coachfellow Nym. I am damned in hell for swearing to gentlemen, my friends. You were good soldiers and tall fellows. And when Mistress Bridget lost the handle of her fan, I took it upon mine honor thou hadst it not.
Didst thou not share Hadst thou not 15 pence?
Reason, you rogue, reason. Thinkest thou I'll endanger my soul gratis? At a word, hang no more about me. I am no gibbet for you. Go, a short knife in a throng. To your manor of pict-hatch, go. You'll not bear a letter for me, you rogue. You stand upon your honor. Why, thou unconfinable baseness. It is as much as I can do to keep the terms of my honor precise. I myself sometimes, leaving the fear of God on the left hand, and hiding mine honor in my necessity, am fain to shuffle, to hedge, and to lurch. And yet you, rogue, will ensconce your rags, your catamountain looks, your red lattice phrases, and your bold beating oaths under the shelter of your honor. You will not do it, you.
Oh my goodness, I'm giving him a round of applause for reading that so beautifully. Nick, what is your sense of the idea of honor here?
It seems that Pistol claims to have honor that Falstaff is saying he doesn't have. So honor is something that maybe some people think they have attained or show, and Falstaff is saying, you're not better than I am. You're on the same level as I am. You think you have honor, but we're all base.
Oh, that is so beautiful. You think you have honor, but we're all base. Great. So he's also saying, like, I'm not there either. I'm not always able to get honor. We might try for it, but we can't get it. Great. Does anybody want to put anything else in the chat about that? Seems pretty good. I'm going to ask you to notice with that idea, just looking at the text. And again, if we don't understand every word, just like students, it doesn't matter. We're trying to figure out, what we can understand. And also we're just looking now for clues. Just notice that I. It's just a very clear sort of different moment that stands out in the text because it's a repetition of the word for me, as we're thinking. Just noticing that. Well, guess what? As I said, this opera is a mixture of the two. And here we have a beautiful example as we move to the next slide, how it's put together in this opera. So here we have a bit of both ideas, and we're going to just try to figure out if we recognize what we've pointed out already and what it means now. I would love if somebody would be brave, somebody completely new, one of you wonderful educators, join us and speak for the very first time, perhaps even some Shakespeare. Will somebody raise their hand either on the screen or with an emoji so that you can be chosen to speak for us? Is there somebody brave? Oh my gosh, nobody. 3, 2, 1. Oh my gosh. Ray, can I volunteer you? I know it's a Saturday and you all want to relax. I got it. Okay. Ray, would you please? Thank you. Would you read now? And if you, as you're reading, notice anything that seems familiar from either the Henry IV, when he asked questions and answered no, or I from Merry Wives, right? It's either, it doesn't mean anything, it's air, or it's something that we can aspire to. No, we don't have it. Just notice that, because we'll figure out when we can find it from each place. Ray.
Okay. Hey, boy, you two go hang yourselves, but not on me. 2 letters for 2 ladies. Take them. Deliver them quickly. Run, get going, swiftly, go. Honor. Thieves, eh? You two are true to your honor, you cesspools of disgrace, when we ourselves aren't always able to be faithful to our own. I myself, yes, I sometimes must put the fear of God to one side and by necessity put aside my honor and use tricks and lies to get by and to avoid trouble. And you two with your rags and your twisted gaze and your rotten sneers are guided by your honor? What honor? What honor? What rubbish! What a joke! Can honor fill your belly? No. Can honor set a broken leg? It can't. Or a foot? No. Or a finger? Or a hair? No. Honor is not a surgeon. What is it then? A word. And what's in this word? There's only the passing breeze. What a fine meaning. Can honor know who is dead? No. Does it only live with the living? Not that either, because flattery inflates it, pride corrupts it, and lies taint it. And as for me, I don't want any of it.
Beautiful.
Scene.
Yes, scene. I'm giving you a round of applause. Oh my gosh. Fantastic. Wow. Shakespeare for breakfast. I love it so much.
Yes.
Do me a favor. Tell me, did you recognize anything from, I'm asking you if honor means anything? No, it doesn't. And did you recognize anything from honor is something to aspire to? And none of us have it. Tell me where you think you notice.
Where it doesn't mean anything.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that last rant really like
Mhm.
drove it home for me. Like, let me tell you all the ways that it doesn't mean anything. It's like, and then yeah, so that last rant really encapsulated that for me.
Great. Beautiful. And did you notice any of the part where it's like you think you have honor? Did you notice any of that part?
Oh, yeah, I feel like in two parts, like where he calls them thieves, like he's saying that's your honor, like you're true to the honor of being a thief. And then before my favorite rant, where he's having these like really delicious insults.
Yes.
Also great
Yes.
disses, as I would say.
Yes, there are great disses, and we're going to diss in just a moment. But absolutely. So in this, it takes the idea of you are ridiculous and honor is something to aspire to, but you are ridiculous, to it doesn't mean anything. So it really brings the Merry Wives of Windsor as the first idea and ends with the darker, deeper idea from the Henry IV plays. And that's what makes this opera so beautiful and this character so beautiful in the opera, because he is a man of multitudes. And this is something that you don't often get, is a character who is as fully embodied as this. And we just want to appreciate that Verdi and Boito took such beautiful pains to figure out what they wanted from these plays to make this character full, and also sprinkled in a little bit, by the way, of A Midsummer Night's Dream once we get out into the fairy part at the end. But they really brought the Shakespeare in and tried to honor the idea of this character completely fully. Thank you so much. I realized that I forgot to tell you one thing about this play, Merry Wives of Windsor, and now this opera, is that this is the first play of Shakespeare's that actually takes place. It's like the Real Housewives of Windsor. It's actually like in the England of his time, which has not happened. His plays are only in England when they are history plays. Otherwise, if anything happens, we go off to the country. We go to Italy, for example. Whenever you have to do something which is outside of what might be accepted by society, you can't do it in England. You have to go somewhere else so that it doesn't show your England as being a place that is not pure and for its institutions. So this takes place in the rural area of Windsor, which is where the Queen's castle is. And again, it was being performed. It was done to perform for the Queen at her location. And we get a real sense of the lives of these people at this time. These are women, wives who do laundry, which is actually surprising to know, because at that time they didn't do very much of it. They didn't use water that much, and the Thames was awful because also the plague was in the Thames. So when poor Falstaff gets thrown into the Thames, you don't want to be thrown into the Thames either, even if you like to swim in the ocean or the river. They do laundry. This is a time when they would have most likely wanted to arrange the marriage of their child, but they choose the wrong person, and ultimately she gets to have the marriage that she wants. They also did believe in fairies and goblins, and there's a little Falstaff story that goes into what ends up where they are in the forest at the end, but they really did believe in that, so that it's an audience that would have understood how it's kind of scary to go in and have possible fairies and pixies around you, but that you are learning a lesson because of that. So it's really of the time. And speaking of the time, I know that we are running close to the end. So what I would love to do is let us all enjoy some of that rant, as Ray said, those beautiful disses and insults, because in the opera, as in the plays, there are a lot of insults. And as I said, Falstaff loves his girth, his size. He says, bring it on, bring me more life. But at the very end, none of it is supposed to be absolutely hurtful. We're learning a lesson at the end. Falstaff needs his comeuppance to be a better person at the end. And he's ultimately forgiven. And everybody in both the play and the opera are brought together at the end. Falstaff finally says, I am the cause of wit, not only in myself, but in other men. Meaning, like, I know how to make a joke, and people can joke about me, and it's all in good fun. So Shakespeare insults are fun. If you're doing an activity like this with your students, please, if anyone is hurt or any of you are hurt by any of these words, please point it out. We will stop, or you stop with your students and decide we will not say those words. We don't want to hurt anybody. We want it to be in good fun. So if Falstaff says, I have a huge belly, he likes that. He's not saying, we're not saying you're fat and that's disgusting. We're saying we love that you are admitting this about yourself and you are owning it. So let us own some insults for a moment. If anybody now is willing to hurl some insults, please unmute yourself. And there is a page here with just examples from Henry IV and the Merry Wives of Windsor, and then from Falstaff. You see in Falstaff, they are smaller. They are like 1 or 2 words at a time because we're singing. And when we sing, we don't need all those other words because we have the music to help support us. By the way, in that Falstaff speech, when he asks the question and answers it, in the music, it's beautiful because he asks the question and there's a pause before he answers. No. Does it do this? No. There's a beautiful music that gives us the weight and the anticipation before he answers for himself. There's also laughter. The music has laughter where the ladies get to sing their laughter so we know they're enjoying themselves. But we have all of these insults. Would anybody just like to take us home with insults from either Falstaff, or we can go to the prior page with longer Henry IV insults or Merry Wives insults? Emily, I see you smiling. Which would you like, from Falstaff the opera or from longer?
On the previous slide, there was something about bacon that really stuck out to me.
Great. Can we go back to the prior slide? There we go. Yes.
Is bacon-fed knave.
Bacon-fed knave. Because everybody just say bacon-fed knave.
Bacon-fed knave.
Yes, good, good, good. I love it. Does anybody else want to point out one more juicy insult? Yes. Oh my gosh. Thank you, Alexa. Unmute yourself and tell us your insult.
Thou naughty varlet. That sounded very interesting.
Beautiful. Can everyone say, thou naughty varlet? Thou naughty varlet. Oh, beautiful. By the way, yes, for those of you who don't know, thou is the same as you. Sometimes you see that it says thou and sometimes it says you. That's simply in the same way that so many of our languages have. It's a more formal or a more personal form of saying you. Thank you so much, Alexa, for adding that. Does anybody want to give one last one?
Someone put in the chat, why don't you say it out loud?
Oh my gosh, someone put it in the chat. Oh, it's a beautiful one.
Now's your chance.
Oh my gosh.
Is it Frederick?
Frederick Brosius.
Come on, don't resist. You
Oh,
just,
yeah.
we just want to hear your voice.
Oh
Let's hear
yeah.
it.
Sorry, I was playing last night, so I look a wreck, but I'm not going to turn my camera on.
Great, let's hear your voice.
Poor son caterpillar.
Oh, I love it. Can everyone say horse and caterpillar?
Horse and caterpillar.
Beautiful. I hope that you enjoyed saying those insults because your students will love it. And actually, I want you to know in the past, that was a form of entertainment for people to have these sort of insult competitions. And again, we don't want to hurt each other, but we want the children and the students, whatever age, and us to have a joy of language, whether it is spoken or whether it is sung. And that's what I want to leave you with today, is just to have your joy in language, whatever you can do. Thank you so much for playing with me. If there's any questions or comments, thank you so much.